Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the European Union's annual Defense and Security Conference here in Washington, D.C. at the United States Institute of Peace. It's sponsored by the European Union and Foreign Policy, and it's our honor to be talking to Will van Gemert, who is the Deputy Director General at the European Police Office, better known as Europol, and you're the head of the Operations Directorate, one of the busiest elements in European security. Sir, talk to us a little bit. First, for our audience, explain what Europol is for those who don't know it, because, you're a coordinating and support function. Tell us the broad and important work the organization does.
Yes, it's a pleasure to do so. Well, Europol is the law enforcement agency of the European Union. We support 2 million law enforcement officers in the European Union, not only police, but also all kinds of different agencies in there. We do this out of our headquarters, and our tasking is to make sure that there is the information flow, that we coordinate actions, and also have the right expertise on development. No coercive powers, but we will make use of our support function towards the agencies if needed in that way. So that's more or less the main task that we have.
You've spent a lifetime in law enforcement, and increasingly criminal organizations are taking on some of the attributes of even nation states. And on your list of sort of top challenges, counterterrorism is one of them, preventing terrorism. Cyber is another element, and of course organized crime, where there are extremely sophisticated networks across Europe. I know that you're going to publish your terrorism threat assessment shortly. Walk us through on each one of these three pieces about what the major threats and the major challenges are in each of these three threat areas.
Indeed, we make reports as part of our expertise role on all those three fields of attention. Well, starting with terrorism, what you see is that the amount of attacks in the European Union, because that's what we were focusing on, has declined. It has gone down. There were 7 successful attacks. But also the picture changed a little bit, because more attacks have been followed by work of law enforcement and the intelligence services. The attacks itself, that's not the full-fledged big attacks that we had in 2015, but attacks by individual persons, most of the time already living in the European Union, being less successful, but nevertheless, this is the concern that we still have. At the same time, you see an increasing arrest of people in the right wing and left wing, especially the right wing area, as a reaction probably towards the situation in the European Union. Still also on the virtual caliphate, the fact that ISIS keeps on trying to reach out to persons probably also motivates persons to commit attacks in the European Union. That's on the terrorist field. On the cybercrime area, what you see is that there is a strong increase in the crime as a service. So there are organizations that make it possible for you or for everybody to commit a crime by making use of the facilities that they offer. Indeed, the picture changed. 4 or 5 years ago, you could make a difference between a script kiddie, a hacker, a state-sponsored activity, things like this. That's not the reality anymore. Even attacks that seem to be appearing from a hacker could be state-sponsored, and the other way around. And then finally, in the developing of let's say in this field, criminal activity, you see ransomware coming up very strongly with big effects on firms, but also on public institutions. On serious and organized crime, we make an interim report this year, in which we have an overview. It's not so much about the headcount of criminal organization. Last time we had 5,000 within the European Union. It's more the change within the criminal organizations. They're becoming more polycriminal. Drugs is still a very important moneymaker in this. And in fields like migration, you see that there is not that amount of people that have been entering the European Union, but labor exploitation takes the place of the money builder, more or less, for criminal organizations. These are a few of those activities that we see in the European Union.
How are you coordinating with the United States? Obviously, the United States has a whole series of interleaving law enforcement authorities, state, local, otherwise. Talk to us about cooperation with the United States, and what are the top cooperation priorities?
And indeed, that changed a little bit, because if every country has its own culture of how to cooperate with each other. I think if you look at the United States, they have the culture of bilateral cooperations with stations of FBI and DEA in the different countries. And that doesn't fit towards Europol, because we are a platform organization that more or less covers 28 countries. So it took some time to adjust towards that kind of cooperation. To give you an example, in 2014, when I started, we had 8 permanent officers at Europol from the United States. At this moment, we have 31 accredited, of which 21 are permanent in our office, of 13 different agencies. So what I want to say is that the acknowledgement of that is more towards bilateral organization, bilateral cooperation, and we have to step up in the next field, being also making use of platforms, has been recognized. It also shows in the figures. We have, between 2014 and 2018, a 600% increase of information exchange. The United States started more than 600 investigations with the European Union via Europol. So yes, that's also the reason why I'm here. We are developing our cooperation. We see the need and also to adjust towards the society. And that's the reason why we are investing in each other in a very strong way.
Brexit obviously is an issue that's looming large. UK in an election cycle. We're going to see who's going to win, whether or not it'll be a hard Brexit on October the 31st or not. Senior European officials have lamented about the loss of British. I know Esa Pulkkinen, who was the head of the EU military committee, was very, very passionate about the qualified UK officers he'd be losing on his staff, and from a European defense perspective. From your perspective, what will Brexit mean, and what sort of, what role will there be, for example, for British agents on your team, or does all of that stop on October 31?
Well, if you're not a member of the European Union, you at the end cannot be also giving staff towards our agencies. That doesn't mean that the people that are in now will have to leave, all of them, but there is a consequence of this. But let me start with at least the acknowledgement within the professional police organizations that there is a need, one way or the other, with a hard Brexit or without a hard Brexit, to have that kind of cooperation. You cannot leave and live in isolation, and a lot of the information we have and a lot of the cases have an UK angle. I think that's recognized by both parties. So, well, we have to follow and wait for the political decision, but we have to prepare in any way that there is a way of working with each other. We are working with non-EU countries. We're working with the United States. We have an agreement with you. We share information. This should be also possible for Brexit, but depending on the political situation, it's the one way or the other way. But I'm confident that we have to find that way of cooperating with each other. Probably then not with the UK staff, but with very strong potential staff on the other side that we will work together with.
Talk to us about the battlefield intelligence and evidence collection role you have, because I think it's utterly fascinating the role that you guys are playing, whether it's in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and other places in the world, especially regarding the fate of European nationals, for example, who went to some of these areas and were fighting as enemy combatants.
Yeah, it's an important issue for the European Union for 2 reasons, more or less. First of all, in the view of security, people that are coming back and would like to commit an attack. Secondly, in the way that their crime have been committed over there, and justice should be there. So also the way to prove what has been happening over there. That's the reason why we are involved in all kinds of cooperation with our American partners to get those elements, either to block somebody or to arrest somebody when he returns, or to find proof that somebody has been investing in this kind of criminal activities. And we have different ways of doing so. We're getting information, participating in missions, working with non-governmental organizations, but also trying to beef up our possibilities to identify foreign fighters that are coming back. One of the big projects that we had is that we have been collecting all the videos, all the magazines that have been published in the last 10 years by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And we were able, because of technology change, to extract the faces of those persons that were in the beginning in full face into a system that we call facial recognition that we will use also to identify. So our role is to adapt, to work, to make sure that the information flow is on a constant basis, and in that way, deliver support towards those 2 goals that I just mentioned.
You just mentioned technology, and one of the questions I was going to ask is from a big data standpoint. Pretty much everybody is starting to use big data to the point where American baseball players have to look in their baseball hats because there are all sorts of play combinations that they didn't know before because things are getting really complicated. Criminal organizations are harnessing big data just like you are. Talk to us a little bit about that dynamic role of technology and where crime fighting is going over the next 10 years.
Well, technology is indeed a big game changer. The development, both in possibilities for law enforcement and criminal activities, as in also difficulties to react towards this. So as an organization, we try to invest a lot in innovation and also big data. And the amounts of data after an attack or from a criminal organization that reach terabytes that you have to process in one way or the other. So we try to come up with new methods in this field. But there's also a challenge because we are a law-based organization that has to prove before court what happened. And things like artificial intelligence, you have to have a good structure to make sure that the proof that comes out of your activity is also still reproducible in court. That's one of the challenges I think that we have. Encryption is another one, so the most sensitive data is encrypted. If it's legal for a good reason, if it's illegal for a bad reason, but we have to be able to make sure that technology puts law enforcement in the position to really do their job. If we have 5G, we should be able to keep on tracking people if there is a legal order for this. And that means that we have to protect our society, also to adjust technology in a way that law enforcement is still in a position to act in line of the tasking.
You brought up artificial intelligence, but I want to take this to a cyber question. Baltimore got hacked. It was the third major hack that a major American city has, or that big American city has experienced. It's also falls into the category of people who will not pay the ransomware. I think those who locked up all the city data wanted $100,000 in bitcoins, and Baltimore has been very clear they're not going to pay that. They're going to reconstruct those databases and try to do them in a more secure fashion. From a broader perspective, how are we doing against cybercrime? How are we doing against cybersecurity? And what sort of training program do citizens have to go through to protect themselves on this? Because ultimately, if you look at it at a corporate level, a government level, an individual level, it doesn't seem like we're doing a very good job on this. What do you think, as one of the chief law enforcement officers in Europe, what's the way for governments, companies, and society to be looking at cyberspace to better protect themselves?
Well, actually, it's a new space in which we are living, and living more intensively than ever after, let's say, the living on ground, on the sea, in the air, in space. This is the fifth dimension, but a dimension created by human mankind. And we don't realize how it's affecting our life and how we have to adjust towards this. Indeed, another report that we will be issuing shortly is our threat assessment in cyber, and it mentioned ransomware as the big development and the big money maker also for criminals, because you can just order a ransomware attack and make use of it. I think Baltimore did the right thing not to pay because probably after paying you will be hacked again. But what is important, I think, that we come up with solutions also that protect our citizens. One project that Europol has been putting forward together with two private firms and one other law enforcement agency is the website No More Ransom. And in that website, we try to disrupt the criminal model. We offer for free, now for more than 50 different malware families, decryption tools. And we have an agreement with the industry that they will deliver it for free. Their situation probably is that at the end, when you are hacked, you will upgrade your security. So that's the win-win situation for them. The win-win situation for us is that we disrupt the business model. So for free, you can be decrypted. We ask our partners, and we have more than 100 now, to deliver this, put it on the website. We think that almost 100,000 people got decrypted by doing so. So I want to flag the need that law enforcement can do something, but private partners are the ones that really have to step up also in this field.
So should people go to the Europol website to be able to download this software?
Yeah, there's a website, No More Ransom. It's available in more than 30 languages. If you are encrypted, have a look over there. If the malware decryption tool is already on there, we try to be as quick as possible if there is something already there, and hopefully disrupt the business model.
That's utterly fantastic. We're always trying to give good tips to our audience. Let me ask you one last question. The whole story about fighting crime is law enforcement makes an advance, criminal organizations make an advance. The dynamic is a lot more complicated because of obviously terror. Now we have a fifth dimension, as you said, in cyber. And part of your brain is devoted to looking 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead. You know, you talked about crime as a service, and I know that sounds funny, but there's nothing funny about it. As you look 5, 10, 20 years forward, what do you see in terms of where we're going to be in terrorism, where are we going to be on organized crime, where are we going to be on cyber, so that we're better preparing for what are going to be very advanced and very persistent threats?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so that's difficult, but give it a try. I think if you're looking at our developments and which things that will influence the crime picture, still we see drugs as a very important moneymaker that gives opportunity also to be in other forms of crime, so we really have to step up and find a solution for this. We already discussed about technology, and the development of technology goes so fast that we as a society are still, let's say, not to the same level of adapting than we should be. So we should find ways, because laws takes us years to get towards our system. So we have to come up with a better solution for this at the end. And finally, I think what will also influence crime is geopolitical activities and the situation. If there is a crisis, if it's about environment, water, whatever, this will influence people, and either by going into the criminal field or making use of people that are moving around in the world. So these are three elements. There are more, but these are three elements that really will influence crime in the next 5 years.
You know, I'm reminded about the Dutch saying that you can't really control people. It's like water. You can only shape where they end up going. And it reminded me to ask about coordination between you and security services and militaries, because, again, these organizations have the impact and are backed by nation states, for example. We know about North Korea's criminal activity. Does there need to be even better and closer integration between police services and and even classical defense forces?
Yeah, I think on one way, the law enforcement is not defense and not intelligence. We have to make sure that there's a difference, and we are accountable to this. But it's true, I think the classical distinction between those areas is disappearing. 5 years ago, I would have said that hybrid is not a tasking for law enforcement. Now you don't know anymore. And that same goes for defense, for NATO, for the EU stepping up in this field. We have to adjust our models towards the situation. How to do this? At least speak with each other and try to find new ways of cooperation. I think that's the best way to go forward.
What's the one thing that keeps you awake at night?
I normally sleep well, but no, it's about, I think, are we able as a society to, with the speed in which we are changing, to also put law enforcement as a very important protector of our society, put in place in the right position. We don't have yet adapted enough towards that fifth dimension I mentioned.
Are you as concerned about disinformation, fake videos, and some of the other techniques that, for example, Russia has been effectively using?
For sure, we have to be aware that thing. If you look at the internet, there are examples of facial recognition in which people tear their head off because they have a mask on. And facial recognition, if we use this as a technology, will be tricked by this. So yes, indeed, that's just one example. There are more examples. Always go back towards the facts. I think that's a very important lesson for law enforcement, but also for normal life, I think.
Phil van Gemert, who is the Deputy Director General of Europol, who also heads the Operations Directorate. Sir, thanks very much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.